Welcome back. You're listening to Through a Glass Darkly Radio on United Public Radio. It's great to see everyone tonight. Sorry for the rather kind of interminable prelude to this. I started 10 minutes early and obviously just made a mistake, but that's fine. It just gave me time to put some more music. So thank you for staying around for 15 minutes. The intro music, as you all know, was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And I have a very special guest today. However, I need to let people know early on, and I'm going to repeat this throughout so people aren't disappointed. Tom is going to be here. He was always going to be here, but he's going to be here in the second hour. Okay, so he will be here at maybe 50 minutes from now. Okay, but that was always the case. There was just no way for me to communicate it in the title logo. So I hope you don't leave, but if you want to leave and come back, I totally get it. Tom's the draw, not me. So what I'm going to do though, as a prelude to that is, and I'll introduce him the normal way, reading his bio and all that good stuff when he appears in my queue. But for now, what we're going to kind of focus on is I'm going to talk a little bit about the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. And then when Tom gets here, he's going to pivot that discussion into discernment, right? How do we know that, for some who've had encounters with these entities, how do we know what we're dealing with? How do we know what it is, what its intentions are, if it's aligned with our growth or if it's misaligned with our growth? So, and we will get into that in the second hour. All right. So, where I want to start is, what is the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis? And to kind of look at that, like struggling here to find it. Okay. So the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis kind of suggests that everything, all the phenomena that people have reported encountering, from UFO sightings to ETs to poltergeists, paranormal experiences, are not caused by extraterrestrial beings from other planets, but rather by entities or intelligences originating from Earth, or from Earth just in a adjacent hidden dimension. This is the shadow biome kind of thesis. And these beings or entities, according to variants of this hypothesis, have coexisted with us throughout history, manifesting in various forms and adapting their appearances and behaviors to fit cultural or psychological expectations of each era. As an example, you get the airships in 1897 were just a tad beyond the reach of our technology. In the 20th century, you're getting these UFOs that people report, but they have rivets and things like that. And now you're getting orbs, anti-gravity, propulsion type objects that you're seeing. So the actual term ultra-terrestrial implies that these beings are not simply terrestrial, but beyond our understanding of earthly life, possibly existing in dimensions or realms parallel to our own. So it just could be that we have a narrow or a very narrow filter on reality, and these entities or this phenomena, maybe it's just one singular intelligence, and that's a whole other rabbit hole you can get into. Perhaps they just perceive a broader range of reality that we do not. Okay. And proponents of this theory argue that they can explain why certain phenomena, such as UFO sightings or encounters with mythical creatures that often seem to blend with folklore, like the Fae, angels and demons and all that stuff. So religious experiences and supernatural events across cultures and history. Now, In addition to the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, there's also, simulation theory, which also can easily explain everything. I'm not going to get into that because I that's my least favorite, but it also has a fairly high likelihood of being what is actually going on. So I'm not going to get into that because it just depresses me. But we're going to talk about the ultra terrestrial hypothesis now. So some of the key points of this is that it's got really good historical continuity, right? So there's a ton of similarities, and I've had a ton of guests on this show that kind of show the similarities between demonology, right? That's kind of the Nathaniel Gillis kind of approach between demonology and UFO phenomena. You've seen others talk about the similarities between fairies and elves and the UFO phenomena. And you know, at a high level, this is kind of something that Keel and Villay have proposed, which is just different guises, same phenomena, different guises over time. And kind of one of the second key points is that they're adaptable, right? Ultra terrestrials may alter their appearance or methods of interaction based on cultural context. So they might seem like extraterrestrials in modern time, and we're kind of going into this interdimensional phase where that's becoming in vogue. They're just from parallel dimensions. If you can extrapolate from Hugh Everett's many worlds theory with parallel universes and things like that. And they appeared as gods, spirits, or mythical beings in ancient cultures. Okay. Another big part of this theory is psychological manipulation. So this is the psychogenics stuff. I think they call it like slide 9 in the Pentagon or whatever it is, right? Where there's biological effects, but that they are able to manipulate human perception, creating experiences or visions tailored to affect individuals or societies psychologically. So I recently interviewed Barry Fitzgerald, who studied this intensely with Steve Mera. And what he claimed is that there was a whole flurry of interactions worldwide with so called shining entities, shining beings, based on the Catholic Church's documentation about a decade before the world wars started in the last century. So they're not necessarily, they sometimes pose with a guise of love and light, but it's often correlated with a lot of human misery that follows. Now, it could be that they're coming here to warn us and to prepare us for these things, for these times of trial and tribulation. It could also be that they're manipulating human societies into these times of trial and tribulation. One of the most common examples of this would be the miracle at Fatima, right, which was interpreted by the church to be the Virgin Mother, but also could be interpreted by intelligence officials as a manifestation of the quote lady that Bledsoe has seen, which makes me a little nervous because that whole that series of events. I want to say it. I can't remember the timing, but it's in recent decades, right? You had the lady appear to Bledsoe prior to, I think everybody can agree, a time of trial and tribulation, starting kind of with immediately after. I think if it started in 2007, you had the global financial crisis. Following and prior to that, right, you had 9/11 in 2001, and then you had the U.S. 2 decades of wars overseas, followed at the end of that almost immediately by the pandemic, and now we have kind of but uh, things are flaring up in the Middle East, in the kind of dangerously pushing us toward the kind of Book of Revelation, the plains of Megiddo, Armageddon, right? So, that doesn't look great. You have Russia and Ukraine. The US is acting like a drunken sailor and kind of throwing money there. Meanwhile, our soft underbelly has been wide open to uh, un, you know, unmanaged illegal immigration. So we have tons of um, Venezuelan gangs that are coming in, seizing apartment complexes. Really, really scary times. At the same time, you have a global elite that is very keen on censorship and shutting things down. So if it feels like end times, I'm not saying it is, but these things usually appear and start appearing in increasing number when there's a time of crisis and turmoil. Add to that kind of the four turnings, right? These 80-year cycles that uh, two authors have talked about, Strauss and I can't remember the other guy's name. Right now, we're in the fourth turning. The fourth turning is a time of destruction. So anyway, I'm just bringing this out because we're talking about this in the context of psychological manipulation, things like that. Another characteristic or feature of this is dimensional or multiverse existence. So, ultraterrestrials are sometimes thought to come from other dimensions or parallel worlds, allowing them to interact with our reality in ways that defy traditional physics. Like, look, none of this defies traditional physics. It's just maybe the physics that we have is not entirely complete. I personally think that what we would call supernatural or magical is just some aspect of science, some law of the universe that we don't quite understand yet, that we have not quite internalized. Quantum mechanics explains a lot more of it than Newtonian physics or traditional Newtonian physics did, but probably doesn't describe all of it. But we're getting closer to better models of reality because that's all physics is. Physics is just our most advanced model of reality. And that model of reality is always going to be changing. It's never going to stop changing. It's always going to become because all at best it's an approximation, but that approximation is going to get increasingly accurate. But like any fractalized system, the lower you look down, the lower your resolution, there's going to be more fractals and more fractals and more fractals. It's just the way that if you believe in a mathematical universe, it's going to work. And kind of the last piece is it's an alternative explanation for UFOs and paranormal phenomena. So the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis offers a contrast to the extraterrestrial hypothesis by positing that these entities are indigenous to Earth, albeit from hidden or unknown realms, and that they may have complex motives beyond simple exploration. One thing that I did note when I was interviewing Dr. Gary Nolan is when I suggested that, any species that would survive the six largest cataclysms that Earth has had, there is one singular characteristic that they would have, and that is they would have to be burrowing species, right? They would have to be digging into the earth. So imagine 365 million years ago, if an advanced civilization had existed on the surface, the only way that civilization could have survived is if they had burrowed into the earth. So we could be living on a world where there are advanced civilizations beneath our feet that have remained advanced civilizations because when there's global cataclysms, when asteroids hit the surface, they're not impacted because they're protected by Earth's crust. But when I just kind of mentioned that about the burrowing species, he kind of smiled in an interesting way. So this is the ultra terrestrial hypothesis. Um, I think there is a physical component to it, and there's also a metaphysical component to it, right? A species that's been around, or I mean, they might not even be from Earth. They may have come from from somewhere else and settled here long before we've been here. And we could be the product of genetic manipulation. Maybe, maybe not, right? Like the advent of blue eyes, like people with blue eyes, that mutation only appeared something like 8,000 years ago. So it's relatively recent. And did that just spontaneously emerge? Was that just a spontaneous mutation that kind of took, you know, grew over time? I don't know. Or were we somehow altered? Anyway, I have like 37 comments now to get through. So I'm going to start going through some of that because that was long-winded and I just have to find where I am. Okay, here we go. All right, so a lot of people just saying hi. So um, I'm just going to rapidly flash through this. For people who are listening, don't worry about it. Let's see. Uh-oh. Ultra Trump Extra. I don't know what that is. I got to be careful. Oh, does Ultra Trump X? Yeah, too much election on the brain, which I will not talk about. Yeah, Tom is definitely well. So the comment is Tom is really is really very well informed on the Gnostic teachings too. Yes, he is. Okay. I appreciate that, Jalea. She's just saying, "Whoop whoop! What a great guest, Sean, hitting it out of the park with your guest." Yeah, I just hope you stick around for another. Wow, I kind of went through that. I burned some time on that. Good to see you, Gray Al. Sacred Geometry. If you're asking if anyone else is on this chat, you got to get people on Twitter. Yeah, if I have to figure out how to like do the copyright thing with him though, because YouTube is really fanatical about that sort of thing. So okay, so I'm just going through. People are talking about the weather. Oh, interesting. FBI memo 6751 dated 1945. Jalea, is that kind of basically the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis? Is that what you're saying? Nice. So Peach Scream writes, I had a hawk get stuck in our chook pen yesterday. He dove into the doorway to kill a rat and couldn't find his way out. I managed to guide him out the door with a calming voice and a broom. Yeah, I had a hawk land again in front of me on the tree, typically where either the owls or whatever. I got a picture of him flying away, but I didn't get a picture of him like sitting on the tree. But okay, thanks, Jalea. Yes, a Spider Robinson novel, Telepath suggests plasmoid sentience, 1983. I think that's definitely part of it. The Soviets had noted that there were biologicals as well as plasmoids. And I think a lot of what you're saying, like Foo Fighters and things like that, may be forms of plasmoid life, i.e., like plasma entities or entities that are living that are composed of plasma. And Gray Owl is pseudo quoting John Brandenburg. Okay. Interesting. Yes, when the mainframe was perceived, it indicated interlopers from other developments, like Bluebeam. Huh. So Science Bob posted a new theory story today on X that was interesting as a take on this scenario. JML, can you say a little bit more about that? Huh. Okay. So Jalea is saying, Sean, we are at the end of a 10-day galactic activation portal way sequence, Mayan system. And man alive, and I don't know, man alive, the clouds have cleared for the first time being. What is happening? Ice sorting. Oh, wow. And add to the cocktail craziness is some big deep space ball of cat turd or some such thing supposed to touch down on Earth like 2027. Yeah, Lou Elizondo was talking about it a little bit. He wouldn't elaborate. This is kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay. I am trying to get through these comments as quickly as possible. My apologies. Hello, Cousin. Thank you, Jalea. I'm gonna go right back to it as soon as I get through all the comments. There's just so many comments that I let go. I so Jesse Roberts is ask if I'm prepping for the hard times. So I was on an airplane and or an aircraft, and it was kind of in a hypnagogic state, and this song came into my head, and just random, but it's called "Silent Running." It's by Mike and the Mechanics. When I came home, I actually read the lyrics, and the lyrics weren't good. I'm just gonna read them to you. I'm not gonna sing, and I can't play it. Although it's a good song, I highly recommend it. But so I didn't know the lyrics. I just knew the song, which is creepy, as it is, right? As an example, the refrain is, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me running? Can you hear me running? Can you hear me calling you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me running? Can you hear me running? Can you hear me calling you?" Okay. So that's bizarre. Why does the song just come into your head? But this is the first line. I'm going to read you the first stanza. Take the children and yourself and hide out in the cellar. By now, the fighting will be close at hand. All right. The second stanza or the second piece, don't believe the church and state and everything they tell you. Believe in me. I'm with the high command. Okay. Let me see if there's, okay. Here's another. I'm just going to jump down later on in the song. Swear allegiance to the flag, whatever flag they offer. Never hint at what you really feel. And the next part, teach the children quietly, for someday sons and daughters will rise up and fight while we stood still. So, if this ultra terrestrial hypothesis is real, and if there are things that are influencing us that we don't see, that felt like a pretty clear message of what we all should be doing. So, and I'm not ready. I don't think anybody can ever be ready. So, but you should be, especially as we get closer to certain key events. And I don't want to scare people, but you should always be prepared. You should always have food. You should always have something to defend that food. And, to the extent that you can have backup power and all that stuff, it's always smart to do. Even, where I live, if you live in a hurricane zone, if you live in an earthquake zone, it's always good to have something and a bug out bag, an emergency first aid kit, all that stuff. So yeah, so that's a long answer, but I'm glad you asked that question because I think there's some weirdness going on, and this is the time of year. My ancient ancestors, because I'm half Irish, right? Uh, this is when the veil thinning, right? This is Samhain, and the death cults celebrated the kind of the church calls it All Souls Eve. We're talking about Halloween, obviously. but there's something behind this stuff. So, okay. Yeah. Peach Scream writes, if you do your research on underground tunnels across the planet, you'll be shocked at how many tens of thousands of miles tunnels are known. We might all be hybrids, JMO. Yes, indeed. The Brahmanical treatise of the cache of the FBI memo. Interesting. Or cache. Are the fairies considered ultraterrestrials? I would say yes. 100%. 100%. Plasmas and plasmoids have massive electromagnetic field and manipulation around them, which produces hallucinatory type effects. Could be true, David. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. The hawks and owls are definitely. The owls are back too. When I got back from travel that I had to do, there were two of them. There were two of them in my kind of out back, just talking to each other. I'm always trying to talk to them, Gray Owl. Yeah, infrared is probably, but it's also some specific frequency of infrared. It's not just the infrared spectrum. Also, the ultraviolet spectrum too. I hear is because we can't see in it. Yeah, the predicted dates they never pan out. There's a reason for that. This is the whole ultra terrestrial hypothesis, right? They're just some of them are just messing with us. Interesting. Thanks, Pix. I will. Pix says I should look at Science Bob's framing of things. It's interesting. Yeah, agree. Yeah, JML just says he's writing a fiction story that describes how we were duped into an NHI deal and were double crossed. Sounds like it was based on some insight he has. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good song. Yeah, Pix says I know that tune. Yeah, it's really good. I wish I could play it, but I don't have I'd have to write a big royalty check, and I could lose my YouTube channel. JML posits 3 likely off-world players. Interesting. Yeah, RH negative I think is a similar weird thing. Yeah, everyone should be prepping. And you don't want to do it too late when things really start to look bad, because then you'll run out of supplies. And I think there's still time. Interesting. It might be John Stewart was telling about that DARPA is now 100% focused on an extraterrestrial event. John Kurtz, at least, so they tell him. Yeah, JML CERN. He's saying CERN is said to have a portal that's very active. Yeah, it's just a question: is it like at the subatomic scale, or is it bigger than that? Yeah, Fred, you're thinking about kind of the red light demons, which is an apocryphal story, maybe based on something that Cliff High's father reported. But I had a guest who went through that story. It's a fascinating story. I don't know how real it was, but they were using diacetin or diacetin. I can't pronounce it. It's a certain chemical uh, treatment or coating that they used on these, and a lot of soldiers were going crazy because they were seeing these like gargoyle like entities in the trees in Vietnam. Again, it's an apocryphal story. I think it's in the genre of the Kandahar Giant kind of Vietnam thing. If you talk to anybody who's been to Afghanistan, they're like, what are you talking about? So I think the Kandahar Giant story is complete bullshit. But that's just the red light demons thing is a little bit more likely, but it might be in that genre. So just take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, we could be a farm. God, you guys have so many comments. It's like endless. Gray Owl. Oh, only. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, I'm also half German, so like the half German side acts as a moderator, right? So it's like if I get upset with somebody, pray you get the Irish side because it'll be quick and violent. But if you get the German side, it'll be slow, methodical, and absolutely uh, ruthless. But just slow, and by the time the German side finishes with you, you won't know what hit you. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, for some reason, Joe, there are several Facebook accounts that I try to stream on Facebook, but Facebook is just garbage. It's a garbage platform run by a garbage human. Um, that it just doesn't, unless you're using their own proprietary garbage, they deprioritize. I don't even think if I post something on YouTube on Facebook, I think I might get one view at best. Like that's how bad it is. So I rarely spend any time on Facebook, especially since they engaged in active misinformation for the U.S. intelligence community during the last election. I have nothing. And then meanwhile, their CEO's trying to make it like he's a good guy now. He can go fuck himself, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so Facebook just routinely fails, and you can expect that. So yeah, we're talking about ultra terrestrials. I'm just trying to get through all the comments. I had a long kind of introduction of that, and then Tom, I'm hoping he joins in about 17 minutes or so. He was always slated to come in the second half hour. Sorry, the second hour. So we will get there. What? Whoa. Which song? Mike, Silent Running, Mike and the Mechanics? That's what I'm assuming. Oh, I don't know. 9 days. Don't know what 9 days means. Yeah, picks. I probably hear them every 3 nights, once every 3 nights, but they're all great horned owls. What part of the country, or where do you live? It could be another country for all I know. I'm just curious what kinds of owls that you hear. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm sorry, Cassim Lee. YouTube, it just says YouTube don't want a reason to shut down a channel. My UFO channel was banned 3 times now. That's horrible, man. Yeah, I'm really skirting the edge, man. Or I'm not skirting the edge, but you have to be very careful with YouTube. Yeah, Samhain. That's how you pronounce it. I used to think it was Samhain, but it's Samhain. Huh. So Danny Castellano was doorknobbed because in addition to the Promise software story, he got some insider info about the portal way interdimensionals being weaponized. Outstanding, Foxy Joe. Wow. So, Soullight US expat says, "Did you see that Cliff High years ago got data from 2009 to 2015 that Joe Rogan was going to interview some American president? Cliff got future forecasting to remote view this, and that was 4 years ago. Interesting. Dr. Michael Sala has reported that beings from 17 different dimensions in and out of CERN portal. Heard something about CERN using what they discovered with invisible particles they discovered in their collider, which was influencing their experiments, was potentially there from future experiments. Yeah, it could be. I think neutrinos are like a theorized particle that travel faster than light. Oh, that jellyfish thing. You know what that looks like to me? That looks like some classified technology of like a man portable. It looks like a guy sitting in like a rocket chair, right? Or like a hover chair of some sort. And it would be something that like Delta uses. That's what that looks like to me. It just looks like a messed up. At first, I thought it was balloons, but now it looks more to me like some sort of terrestrial technology that special forces would use. So just like a man portable device where they can, they sit in some sort of like a rocket chair rig, not a rocket chair, but something that's like some combination of drone technology or whatever that can send individual soldiers. You know, that's what it looked like to me. If you like really zoom into it, that's what it looked like. It didn't look like anything. And I think there was an interview that Ross Coulthart did with a whistleblower, and she basically said that it's not all she can say is it's not a UAP, but she can't really say what it is. So that's my theory about what it is. It's one of our things. Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't complain about your comments. Yeah, that's fair. Thank you for the comments. It means there's interest. And they're all like above board and not going to get me banned. So I appreciate that. Huh. The Kandahar giant thing from John Lear. I don't know. The latest story has US special forces. So it's like a 2000 uh time period sort of story now. Okay. Yeah, peach scream, good mix. Life 101 is asking if I've ever played with a Ouija board. Yes, and I stopped when I was 12, and I will never use one again because I was with friends and the Ouija board just went straight to my initials. It said SPH. I will see you in hell. And my friends could have been playing a trick on me, but I didn't know if they knew what my middle initial was. So after that, I was done. I won't use them anymore. I won't touch them. They're not in my house. I won't mess with them. So I've interviewed somebody else on the channel that whenever somebody was in a room using them, it would the Ouija board would stop and it would immediately address me. It would just address him. It would say, "John, nice to see you again." And that's happened to him like 2 or 3 times. So, yeah, not a fan. So Sean, what are your thoughts about North Korean soldiers now fighting in Ukraine? I think it marks a dangerous escalation because they're getting experience now fighting in a high intensity conflict, more experience than the U.S. military has now, which is terrifying. Like we fought. There's an interview with a command sergeant major, I think, of the U.S. Army, and this guy's been fighting in the Middle East, all that stuff. But he said he's never been to war. I would disagree with him. He's been to war, but what he means is he's never been in a high intensity conflict, and he's right. Like we're talking situations where we lose 500 to 1,000 men a day, and I don't think Americans realize that. But that's what the clowns running everything right now are flirting with because they're stupid and they've never served, and they don't know anything about military doctrine and tactics. Yeah, he might be. Hey, Sooty, good to see you. Yep, you haven't missed Tom yet. For those who just joined, he's going to join. Should be in about 10 minutes. I will send him an email actually soon just to make sure he's usually a pretty prompt he has a prompt professional personality, so he should be here. I have not tried IR cameras because I every time I look for something, I never really find what something that's easy. Oh, barn owls. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mine are great horned owls. Oh my god. YouTube refuses to monetize. Yeah, the same thing happened to Whitley Strieber. YouTube refuses to monetize his channel. It's really weird. Oh, barred owl. Okay. Yeah, Peach Scream. I don't recommend Ouija boards. That's bad stuff. It's like leaving your front door open in like Skid Row. You don't do it. Thank you, Lord Kinsey. Lord Kinsey writes, "Hi Sean, hi all. Just here to thank you once again. Love your work. I appreciate you. Thank you, Lord Kinsey." Oh my god. Yeah, our reality is getting very strange. The real deal writes, "I'm curious about your perspective on the survival of human personality after death, especially considering the diverse views within parapsychology. Where do you stand on this? I think our consciousness retains its memories, and I think we temporarily forget anytime we incarnate here. I don't have any evidence or experience to. I mean, I think that's where the evidence points. Let's just say, yeah, it could be a temporal marker. Uh, Channeling, I I'm still on the fence. I don't know yet. I have invited Daryl Anka to come onto the platform, but he doesn't respond, which I understand because I only have 10,000 subscribers. It would not be worth his time. Yeah, Fred writes, "Do you think it was weird Rogan kept interrupting Trump when he was talking about UFOs? Thought he would." Yeah, I thought it was really weird, and I thought it was really annoying too. But I think Dr. Greer has been compromised. I think initially all the work that he did was helpful for the UFO community, but um, he works with the intel. In fact, I know he works with the intelligence community. I interviewed, somebody who you'll see. Like his name's Doctor. Why am I not? There's a future episode where he just lays it out. Like Greer was working with the intelligence community when he started doing CE5. So not in a bad way. He was just they were coming along and observing the techniques and stuff like that. So he 100% has links to the U.S. intelligence community. I hope there's no war in the Korean Peninsula. Oh, barn and barred owls. Yeah. So the work of Stephen Mera and Barry Fitzgerald is that where there's negative magnetic anomalies, there are higher suicide rates and there are higher rates of observance of the phenomena. There's something tied into rocks, right? These in places where there's like kind of rocky outcroppings, things like that. And David Paulides' research also points to that. So there are actually distinct places on the planet where you can find the phenomena. All right. All right. I'm just going to send Tom a quick email so that just bear with me here. All right. Hopefully that gets to him. Let me just find something else. All right. All right. 3 minutes out. I'm getting nervous now. Where is he? Let's see. Yep. Skinwalker Ranch. Maybe. Oh, that's not a bad idea. Based on everything I've learned today, what is your summary? It would be good for you to do an update video routinely on this. I don't know about routinely, but I I think I probably owe the audience something. Yeah, people go missing around boulders. That's right. Uh, well, to be very clear, negative magnetic anomalies is verbatim what Barry Fitzgerald told me. So, huh. Yeah, I hope the energy isn't deleted and recycled. That kind of stuff. I think they're fake. I mean, I I think something happened. I think the U.S. intelligence community tried to basically took out Chinese scientists, and I think that's why there's all this other smoke screen stuff. But I think the MH370 videos are not real. But I had Ashton on because there are people who do think they're real, and I could be wrong. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but um, I don't. We don't have that technology. Huh? Sallow is taking a run at Courtney Brown, I guess. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to get into that. Hi, Peter. There we go. Tom's here, and like a minute before. All right, so I'm going to introduce him formally, and then I'm going to bring him right on. Okay. So, of course, the window of whatever I'm trying to find is never available when I need it. Here we go. I'm just going to reopen it because it's not. Okay. So, for everyone here who's been anticipating this, Tom is here, as I noted during the second hour. He'd be here in the second hour. So Tom Montalk is a fellow truth seeker on a quest to expose the dark and empower the light. His primary goal is to help others arm themselves with knowledge to better fulfill their evolutionary potential. After studying physics and electrical engineering for 4 years, he left college to pursue more independent research. His interests include spirituality, alienology, alchemy, Gnosticism, and Hermeticism, quantum and scalar physics, experiments, forbidden history, military tactics, and composing symphonic and epic doom metal. As Tom is listening, people have already mentioned their passion for your doom metal. So we might get questions for that. His true passions are science and music. Tom and his girlfriend currently live in Florida. Tom, welcome, my friend.
How you doing?
Doing pretty well. I spent about the first 15 minutes talking about ultraterrestrials, and then until you joined, I was answering questions on from the peanut gallery. So the bottom line is I just kind of laid out a very high level ultra-terrestrial, what the hypothesis is, who the proponents are, so Keel, Vallée, etc.,
Mhm.
and some of the implications behind that. Now, I think the way to get started here is, and I've kind of telegraphed what we're going to be talking about. So, just briefly, kind of just to dovetail the prior discussion with current discussion, where do you think ultra terrestrials fit into this whole matrix of reality, if at all? And then, based on that, what I think you wanted to focus on was discernment on the path. How do you tell if you're getting messages, if the intent is aligned with your well-being or misaligned with it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's
Yeah,
kind of the very high level. Okay,
right.
so ultra terrestrials, where do they fit in, and how can we use this principle of discernment with them?
Okay. Well, so just starting out, everyone's familiar with aliens, generally speaking, extraterrestrials, or see, some people think of them as interdimensionals, but there's variation on how we define that. Do we mean entirely non-physical, or do we just mean that they are physical, but they can somehow phase into another state that seems to be less physical? Because if you want to call them all interdimensionals, then by that definition, you'd basically be calling aliens ghosts, which they're not, because they have technology, they have bodies, they have DNA. So they have a physical aspect to them, which ghosts typically don't, right? So beyond just the human sphere, there's not only the non physical spiritual entities like ghosts, but there's also something in between that's quasi physical or variably physical. Physical some of the times, able to shift into a more ethereal state. And if you go by that definition of what an interdimensional is, or whatever you want to call it, then that is sort of
Mhm.
what fits the alien thing. However, there also seems to be a level even beyond that, which is the ultra terrestrial level, which I didn't listen to your first hour, so I'm pretty sure you covered it pretty well. But in my opinion, how I define ultra terrestrial is that they are beyond space and time, and they have
Mhm.
mastery. They have mastery of space and time. And so, if there is a kind of hierarchy with, let's say, humans at the bottom and secret societies, black ops programs in the middle, aliens above that, then above the alien level, you would have something that I guess you could call it alien, but it's not really alien because it is beyond physicality altogether, beyond linear time, beyond space. And they have the ability to use consciousness, just pure consciousness, to manifest bodies here or to operate here, and to even mess with the timeline itself, to generate synchronicities, to alter matter, just using consciousness, which is not something that aliens typically have the ability to do without the use of technology. I mean, they have telepathic abilities, maybe they have telekinetic abilities, although from all the cases that I've seen, aliens typically do not display a very strong telekinetic ability. I mean, when I graze, when grays float across the floor instead of, walking, it's probably some kind of technology being used. It's not really pure telekinesis levitation. However, there are interdimensional beings, or not
Mhm.
interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial beings who, in their non-physical state or just using their consciousness powers, can indeed levitate and do all kinds of things. Now, when we talk about ultra-terrestrials, there's some that seem to be more benevolent, and we would call them light beings or angels or archangels, that whole sphere. Uh, and that doesn't mean, of course, that religion has a monopoly on the term angel or archangel, because
Mhm.
these concepts are found in other belief systems, whether mysticism, occultism, ancient beliefs as well, right? So when I use the term angel, I'm not saying that, therefore, we're only talking about Christianity right now. We're talking about an objective class of beings that religion would call angels, and other, belief systems will call some other term. Okay. So those are the positive ultra terrestrials. But the negative ones, um, The lower ultraterrestrials at that level seems to be perhaps some of the upper, more powerful mantid type beings, and then the class above them, which doesn't even have a physical form. But when they do show up, they tend to show up as like some sort of a energy field or nebula kind of thing, undulating lights, something like that, where they're so far removed from our physicality that I don't know if it's a lack of ability or merely a kind of contempt or pride that they have that they don't want to physically manifest here. So they stay in the more energetic state. And but the interesting thing is, in various abduction accounts, there is interaction between the more physical aliens and these non-physical ultra-terrestrials, and they take orders from them. So above the alien level, which is already kind of variably physical compared to us, there is yet something more, which is probably completely non-physical, but not in the way that ghosts are, because ghosts, they are non-physical, but they are still very limited in their psychic abilities, intelligence, powers, right? So we're talking about something that is non-physical, but not in a ghost-like way, but more in a kind of beyond space-time completely kind of way.
Now, where would the Jinn, divas, the Fae, where would they fit in all this?
Okay, yeah, so typically if we look at history, okay, there was interaction between humans, just like everyday humans, and these jinns, or these Fae, or these devas, including, according to lore, interbreeding, having these halfling children, these demigods, and there's rumors that various famous heroes of history, like Alexander the Great, that they were half mortal and half god. Okay, and by god we're talking not just the Olympian gods, but essentially what we're talking about here, like Jinn, possibly even now modern day Nordic aliens. That kind of other human, superhuman component. And so when we talk about those things, we're talking about humanoids that have bodies, they have language, they have a culture, they have a government, they have a civilization essentially, but it is not in our space time. It is more like in a kind of parallel space time. So it's not that they're beyond space time, they're still within it, but it's like another channel, you could say. So like a side frequency or a different, just a different realm or dimension in a way.
Okay. Now, in this framework, how do people receive communication? Is it prompted? Is it unprompted? And how does this discernment process, or how should they use discernment to interpret this stuff? So let's
Yeah.
first start out. There's people who have no interaction whatsoever, at least conscious interaction that they're aware of. A, how do they become aware of it? And then B, how do they know how to discern these things? As an aside, I just interviewed Barry Fitzgerald, and his view was you don't just accept the first thing that's said. You always ask question. And the ones that don't have your interest in mind will just bounce. They don't want to explain themselves, and they won't explain themselves. But after all, if something is willing to answer a simple question, maybe there's something there. But anyway,
Mhm.
go ahead.
So, I mean, the best way to understand this is to understand the capabilities of these beings. And it gets more complicated because we have different classes of beings, right? We have everything from, um, we have everything from secret societies, which are humans like us who might have additional knowledge and maybe even psychic powers. And then beyond that, you have the whole class of non physical beings like ghosts and demons. And like spirit guides, just deceased relatives and friends and such that are on the other side of the veil, kind of looking in on us. That happens too. And then beyond that, you have the higher alien powers, and then beyond that, the ultra terrestrials. So depending on their ability level, they can affect you in different ways. So let me just pick one at random. For example, your deceased friends and relatives who might be watching over you. Being that they were human, they're not going to now have superhuman levels of intelligence. However, being in a non-physical state, they will have basic telepathic abilities. Okay, so they can visit you at night and perhaps project into you a dream. Okay, where you meet them in a dream. So it's like a dream meeting. That can happen. They can drop an idea into your head, for example, like if they can kind of see that it would be very good if you went down this particular path, maybe for a job or a relationship or something like that. Maybe they'll drop a little nudge in your mind saying, "Hey, go check this out." And then if you, out of your own free will, choose to do that, good things can happen. Okay. But when we're talking about aliens, for example, or NHIs in general, once they have the ability, for example, to be extremely telepathic, to abduct you, to do things during the abduction, like installing post-hypnotic programming, Well, now it gets to a whole new level because you can wake up from an abduction the next morning not really having remembered what went on, but now within your subconscious there is a various time bombs that have been installed in there that are of a hypnotic nature. So you might not even know it, but the very next day you get triggered and you have this very strong compulsion to check out a particular person or subject or website or video, go down a certain path, or to not pursue something that you were into even the night before the abduction, something really good and positive for you. You might wake up the next day and be totally demotivated for it. It almost feels like whatever you're into last night, that was like months ago. It just feels so far away. So it feels like you've been shifted out of your flow, out of your momentum into another, whether it's like now you don't feel like doing anything, or maybe now you've got this obsession or compulsion to follow something that is actually not good for you. It could be some material pursuit just as a pure distraction, or in the case of a disinformation attempt, it might be to get you to get obsessed over a particular influencer within ufology who's putting out disinformation, but maybe because they look like someone that you're into, like attracted to, then maybe you take them more seriously than you should, and you start swallowing the picture that they're putting out. And then over time, you can become so infatuated that maybe you become part of their network. You join it. And so now you become part of the disinformation attempt yourself. So there are various ways that you can be influenced for bad in these examples to go against your intuition, your better judgment, and to be led astray. Now, speaking more generally, there are certain things that can happen to a person who's awakening that these things in themselves don't indicate whether it's positive or negative. It just indicates that things are interested in general. So, for example, you might get synchronicities, and I know you've definitely had your share of synchronicities, right? Yeah. So, and me too, of course, and everyone else that I know that's been really on this path of awakening, we get synchronicities. But synchronicities in themselves don't guarantee whether it's positive or negative. It just means that things are weird. You're on an improbable path. You're on an improbable timeline because you're applying your free will. You're awakening, you're researching, you're doing things that are not within the consensus reality, what everyone else is doing. So you're the anomaly. So, and it's no surprise then that one anomaly, which is you, attracts another anomaly, which is entities, phenomena, synchronicities, all this weird stuff. It tends to kind of all cluster together because it's like one improbability attracts another, right? So synchronicities is one. Another example would be ideas being dropped into your head. And I mentioned this earlier in regards to spirit guides or deceased relatives kind of helping you out. But the thing is, any entity that is telepathic can do that, whether it's an alien, whether it's a remote influencer in an underground military base, trying to nudge the timeline by looking at little pivot points on the timeline and identifying that you might end up doing something, that might be important and swaying you telepathically, right? So you might get an idea dropped into your head that you don't even know it's not your idea unless you're paying attention, but it can nudge you in very subtle ways. And so that's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? Where a butterfly in Japan flaps its wings, causes a hurricane over Brazil. So if you're
chaos
a butterfly,
theory, classic chaos theory.
Exactly. So chaos theory, and you have to understand that these non-human intelligences, they are incredibly efficient and intelligent, and a lot of them are precognitive. So they know where different timelines spawn from, the little points, It's like any time travel movie where they try to go change the past. They always try to find that little point that causes the future to be a certain way. Well, that's how it is in real life. And these entities use their ability for, at the very least, telepathic influencing. But in the case of aliens, also abductions, mind programming, implants, live telepathic persuasion, and so on. So it's a gamut of different ways that entities can do things. So that's, some examples. What else? Unusual dreams. You can have dreams that have a meaning, you can tell that they're not just recycled memories from the day before, right? So you can tell that they're put into you for a particular kind of meaning. And you have to pay attention to those because sometimes they can be disinformation, especially if there's someone in the dream telling you verbally to do something, trying to reason with you like verbally, being very pressured in that way. You have to watch out for those. Versus if it's a positive influence, then it's going to respect your free will more, and it might only do it in a very symbolic, elegant way where you have to put in the effort of interpreting it, so that you're you have to work out of your own free will in order to decode the dream, and then you might gain some sort of insight about the path that you're on or some issue you're dealing with, or something like that.
And on the side, did I tell you about the Jabril dream?
Is that the one with the Cerberus dogs or not? The three hit?
No.
Okay.
This is the word that I didn't know anything about, spelled Jybril. I saw it. It was written. It wasn't spoken.
Yeah.
And then when I looked it up, there's no word spelled that way. But if you just say it and then just spell it phonetically, just change the Y to an I.
Mhm.
It's the Arabic name for the Archangel Gabriel,
Got it.
which, if you go down that rabbit hole in the Catholic tradition, is the patron saint of messengers.
Hmm.
That's
Interesting.
weird. And
Yeah.
it was a word. It was a word I'd never had heard before
Hmm.
in a dream. So when you say symbolic and strange, that's where you have to do some work. When you do the work, it's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
That's, I think, an example of that.
Well,
So we can talk about what the heck that means, later. But
yeah,
anyway,
I will just say as a side note on that I have detected in different odd places, whether it's channeling, alien stuff, the history of the elementals, in Rosicrucian lore, that there is an undercurrent of almost Arabic, or maybe it's Persian, but I'm leaning towards Arabic, some sort of Arabic theme throughout it. What does that mean? Does it? I don't know. I'm not going to speculate too much on that just yet, but it's possible that there are languages out there, either other realms or other places in space time, that resemble Arabic, or possibly if they are time travelers from the future, maybe there's some sort of cultural connection back in time. But I'm just going to put that out there as a curiosity that.
that would be horrifying. But I'm just going to
Yeah.
say it out loud. But I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is that, though.
Right.
But it could. But it could be. That could be a hypothesis. But
Yeah, Arabic and Russian too. Yeah.
Russian, huh?
Hmm. Yeah, there's different themes. Like I know Jack Sarfati at one time, or I don't know if he still currently does, but he believes that there might be time traveling Russians involved in this. And I know Philip K. Dick, he also suspected that there were time traveling Russians in contact with him. So, and I've heard some other themes as well. So it's hard to verify, right? Because there's so much disinformation and noise and people making things up that it's hard to discern the signal from the noise. But when I notice patterns, I kind of put them in the back of my mind in case they connect with anything.
Yeah, I'm still not sure where I fit on Sarfati. Right.
Yeah.
There's one. One is he is who he says he is. Right. Where what he's saying is the truth, or he's there as a disinformation agent, and his theories are close, but they're deliberately off in order to sway our peer competitors in a different direction.
Hmm.
Right. And the only reason I say that is because he's closely affiliated with Ron Pandolfi,
Right.
who's like the puppet master when it comes to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, will respond to you if you email him it took him 2 minutes to respond to me.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, but it was an on-brand response, but I appreciated it. He just basically politely declined.
Yeah.
But because he is not in the taxonomy of crooks and loons and worse, according to his usual commentary. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, I mean, you know how it is with these groups, like the Aviary, the Working Group, the Invisible College, all those academic intelligence guys and their little secret network stuff, and then they're trying to manipulate public perception and whatever directive either they themselves came up with or that they were given. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the only problem with that, the risk is that people give them more attention and awe and respect than they possibly deserve, just because they have credentials in academics. Which is
well,
yeah.
they've also been read into certain things.
Yeah.
Right. So that's their inherent advantage. Right. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
they're more qualified to handle this information than anybody else is. Right. Just because somebody's good at physics doesn't mean that they have discernment in other areas like sociology, mass communication, their predictive ability on how social and economic systems will react to these things.
Right.
Right. In fact, a physicist is the last person I would want to make a prediction on how human civilization will react to some of this stuff. Right. So I'd want a more holistic thinker, like somebody who is more of a generalist, to be in charge of this problem, because it has so many things that interact. It's not just a narrow technical problem.
Yeah. Yeah, not to mention a lot of government insiders, even if they have inside information, even if they've been read in, they're still who knows how many steps removed from the actual NHI reality. You know, NHI made contact with some sort of group, which got filtered down to something else, and it got passed down. Who knows over like decades, and now finally they're getting read in on something, versus an abductee or contactee who even just the night before was like face to face with a freaking gray alien. I mean, come on, that's like one step removed. So now, once you only have one step removed, now you only have the filter of the person's own subjective filters on that experience,
Hmm.
and also what the aliens themselves are lying or making up. So that's only two filters you have to go through versus these government people, where you've got their own agenda plus the group's agenda that they're working for, plus all the distortions going back who knows how many decades. So
The one advantage, though, that they have that none of us do have is they have mosaic. They have a better model of mosaic theory than we
mhm,
do,
yeah,
right? So their signal to noise ratio is much higher, right? Because they put out a ton of misinformation, and ideally, you would think that they would know what's misinformation and what's not,
yeah,
so they can kind of move all that stuff off the table, and they can focus only on real cases. But even then, I when these people are read in, they're not working on these projects for their entire careers. They're just, this is your 2-year assignment. This is what you're working on. So,
mm,
I think that's why when Moultrie and whoever the other bonehead was that initially testified before Congress, that's why they didn't even know what Roswell was, right? Like they had no idea. Either they were deliberately obtuse, but I doubt it. I think they just weren't well prepared for this meeting. So,
yeah, yeah. So ideally, people should call upon a full spectrum of sources and resources, and not, for example, only focus on the government people to the exclusion of the abduction phenomenon, because then you're missing out on a whole mountain of data. It's a different kind of data, different qualifications for it, but yeah, it's good to dig into as many different sources as possible. Yeah, but so yeah, getting back to the whole discernment issue, right?
mhm.
So I kind of talked about the different things that don't necessarily indicate whether it's positive or negative, like synchronicities, unusual dreams, ideas being dropped into your head. Another one is people, even multiple people independently throughout the day, telling you the same thing. Could be a message, could be a recommendation for a particular book or author, or some sort of course or group you should look into. And people like that, a lot of times they themselves are being nudged or guided in some way, whether they know it or not. Now, what is it that's nudging them? That is a question. It can be positive entities, it can be negative entities, it could be your own subconscious like projections and reshaping of reality. So these are the things we have to be mindful of. But in terms of distinguishing between one or the other, there are certain things that are unique to the positive entities and certain things that are unique to the negative entities. So, I mean, generally speaking, when we are talking about positive phenomena, it tends to be just what you needed. Like the path that you're on, you try to figure out an answer, and it just comes like the timing is so weird, like how it just comes about, and it just ends up being the exact thing that solves your mystery, the riddle that you're trying to figure out. That's an example of a positive thing. Not only that, but when it comes, you have this concordance, this harmony, this agreement from top to bottom of your being. I mean, deep within. So logically, you might try to rationalize it away, but deep down that, yeah, man, this not only does it ring with truth, but if you analyze it logically, it checks out. Okay, so the whole thing about like truth doesn't fear scrutiny or analysis. It's that sort of principle where if it is
Mhm.
legit, it's not going to fear you analyzing it logically, intuitively, based on your experience. It's gonna actually check out. So that's another example. It also tends to have the kind of vibe of being expansive, refreshing, uh, clarifying, making you more lucid, like more awake and more aware and more present. Whereas when we're talking about negative manipulations, they always try to kind of squash you down in consciousness, try to get you to be in like a trance state or acting out some hypnotic script or being not on your game, okay, kind of being off balance. So you make mistakes of judgment, errors of judgment, errors. You're not listening to your intuition, you're not listening to your logic. You just kind of, it's like if you're being pressured by a salesman to buy a car and you're kind of a weak person, you're going to feel that pressure and you're not going to be thinking clearly. And all of a sudden you start signing things. And before you know it, you've got a lemon. Okay. So that's the feeling of the negative stuff, where it is an appeal to ego, ego identity, like your shadow based needs and wishes, the secret things that you truly wish for. Like, let's say that as a kid, you always wanted attention from your father and approval, but he never gave it because he's a cold, aloof person. So now
Hmm.
all you want is attention and approval. And then so if something plays on that, kind of lures you, like promising you fame and fortune, and like, hey, attend our conference or join our group or whatever, and we'll give you things. We'll make you famous. I mean, that's sort of an exaggeration because it's more subtle in real life, but things like that. So the more you know your weaknesses, the more you know the attack angles that these negative forces will try to play on. Okay, and not to mention these negative things, they also go against your intuition. Like you can feel that there's something off. If you're in touch with your intuition, you can sense that there's something off, like there's something suspicious about it. And therefore they depend on appealing to your ego, to your wishful thinking, to kind of ram it through against your intuition. So you'll feel this conflict within you where you've got this sense of okay, this feels kind of wrong, but oh man, it looks so tasty, so exciting, this feeds my ego identity. And if you go for it, whether it's greed or all these other vices, usually it bites you in the butt, because
Hmm.
in addition to it being a trap, there is also, on a higher metaphysical level, there also seems to be a kind of lesson component to it. Like, okay, you've got this weakness. We're going to allow these negative entities to do what they do to you. And if you fall for it, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get burned. But guess what? You're going to learn from it, and you're going to be stronger in the end. So we're not going to deny you that growth opportunity. So therefore, we're not going to intervene and prevent this sort of temptation or trap from happening, right? So there's this whole like spiritual back channel, I think, that happens too at the same time. So I think if you're just honest with yourself and you can feel within yourself whether something agrees with you logically, intuitively,
Hmm.
on your experience, your judgment, if everything checks out, then usually it's, I mean, 99% of the time it's going to be positive, right? But if there are any red flags whatsoever, if there's disagreement, you got to look into that, and you got to decide whether your disagreement is intuition warning you against something that is appealing to your ego, or whether it's the reverse, where intuition says, yes, this is a good thing, but your programmed mind says, oh no, what if this, what if this, what if that, all these irrational fear based projections, right? So it's kind of tricky. But on my website, montalk.net, if you go there, and I think it's in the metaphysics section, there's an article, or is it the matrix section? It's called Battle of Opposites. It's
Hmm.
called Battle of Opposites. And in that article, I go through different permutations of whether it is internal or external encouragement or resistance. Is it positive or negative? So I give examples of each thing. And if you guys want more detail, just check that one out and kind of think it over and see whether it matches your own experiences. Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of them will.
The other thing that I've heard, and again, I don't know if this is the right answer or not, is that the kind of the low frequency type beings will reach out to you unprompted, will try to influence you unprompted, whereas kind of higher frequency beings that they're there to help you, you have to ask for help before you start to interact with them. Is that accurate, or are there exceptions to that?
Yeah, there are exceptions. So it's more of a rule of thumb than an absolute law, right? So it's a tendency rather than an absolute law. And one of the exceptions would be if, I mean, this is kind of controversial, but before you were born, okay? So before you were born, if there is reincarnation, if there is such a thing as destiny or some sort of a curriculum in life, okay? There are certain agreements that you might have made in terms of, okay, I want to meet this person at this point. I need this kind of general lesson track in life, okay? And so therefore, as you're living that life, there might be certain times when an awakening is scheduled for you. So you might, unprompted on your current behalf, be given an opportunity or be approached or given a certain dream or UFO experience or something that helps you wake up, helps you, like, it triggers you, it gives you that catalyst that's needed to kind of start the awakening process. And so you didn't ask for it as a human being, but you probably did ask for it in a higher state, before being born. But that's very tricky because, true as that may be, negative entities, especially aliens, especially grays, okay, especially those negative alien types, they will play on that process to kind of hijack you away from your path by making you think that your abductions were agreements with them, that you're one of them, you're here to help their agenda. And the thing is, if you don't fully remember your past life, or I mean your pre-incarnational plan or whatever, then you're gonna have a sense that, hey, I've always felt different in life. I've always felt different from other people. Maybe I'm an alien. Maybe I'm not even from this planet. And so when these grays come and they tell me that, hey, you're special, you're one of us, then if I didn't know myself, I might fall for that. I might go
Mhm.
along with that because they're providing me an answer to a kind of vague intuition that I'm not fully clear on. But something that I can feel deep down is sort of true. Like I do feel that maybe I'm not from here. And then they give me this very convenient answer, just like, some cults or certain religions do. They give you the answer that you didn't even know you're looking for because it's not even the right answer. It kind of leads you astray. So we have to be careful that there's a baby, there's a bathwater, and you can throw out both together, right?
Mhm.
Or you can accept both together, but no, you shouldn't. You should just distinguish between the truth and the falsehood, and then keep the true part. And the true part in this case, I think, is that there is a kind of metaphysical framework that guides our life and that can intervene at certain points to introduce catalysts in our awakening. But the problem is there are also counterfeit forces that will also try to throw little things in our path to lead us astray. And so therefore, once again, relying on your intuition, your discernment, your research, your judgment is so important. And you can't just like push that all aside for the sake of some emotional, uh, hypnotic, telepathic pressuring that you're receiving by negative entities to bite their bait.
Yeah, especially if you try to ask questions and they don't give you any answers, or they're evasive, or they
Yeah,
just go away. Right.
right. Yeah, I will say something on that though, which is that positive entities, in order to be them, okay, you can't just be a dum dum. You actually have to be quite smart. You have to be aware and you have to be mindful. So in other words, they're not acting 100% on their own volition. They're acting within the how do I say it, a channel or guideline or framework of the divine will to some degree. Different entities have it to different levels. I mean, just like if you're a really good person, you're going to listen to your conscience, right? You're going to listen to your
Mhm.
intuition when you're going to be, when you should help someone out, or if they are a codependent kind of person, then maybe you should kind of back off to let them kind of fall on their face so that they kind of grow out of that phase. So there's judgment, there's intelligence to it. And so these higher positive entities, they are mindful of your soul profile, your destiny, the long-term, game plan within your path. And so therefore, they're not going to shortchange your path by giving you a giant by being very micro controlling in your life and giving you all the answers that you want. They're not going to do that. They're going to make you work for those answers, but give you hints along the way and give you help when you're extremely stuck. That's how they operate. Okay. Whereas negative entities, they'll blab your ear off 24/7 if you've got one of those types. I mean, they'll tell you about the universe and this alien race and that alien race and the cosmic history of Earth and this and that. And they'll do it like every day until eventually you become an expert in their BS. And then you go on these podcasts as the expert in this BS, and you're Mr. or Mrs. Whatever, like the Palladian dolphin conspiracy or something, right? So you become that person, and you just add to the noise that's out there, which covers up the truth. And that's what these entities want ultimately. They want control of a person. They want the control of information and the control of perception that humanity has of who they are and what they're really here for. So that's the thing, positive entities, they tend to be a little more careful about what they say. Unless, I mean, there are certain exceptions too, which we don't really need to get into here. But generally speaking, I would say that positive entities are more mindful to not talk your ear off and shortchange your learning lesson, while negative entities are control freaks and they'll tell you a whole load of BS because that's what they're there to do.
Now, where do you come in on channelers? I haven't really. I don't think I've interviewed a channeler on this show yet because I I'm skeptical, but I'm open to. I
Yeah,
don't quite know what to think yet because
it's
I
a
haven't done my homework. Right.
right. See, so channeling is the extreme end of a process that on the weekend, the weaker part of it is something that you and I and others listening already are doing. Anytime we try to brainstorm or try to come up with a solution to a problem, try to figure out a particular mystery, when an idea pops to your mind, is that you or is that something helping you out? And if it's
Mhm.
something helping you out, then technically you are channeling another intelligence, whether you know it or not. Okay. Same with dreams. When you're dreaming, a lot of times there are other forces, whether it's your own higher self, subconscious, or entities that are around that are injecting things into your dream. So your mind is a transceiver for these telepathic messages, right? So that's channeling. However, what you and I typically call channeling, there are people that are dedicated to that and they try to amplify it to the max. And that's very problematic because a lot of them don't have the discernment needed to filter the signal from the noise, let alone truth from the lies. See, a lot of them, it's hard enough to even get a message that is independent, that has its own seeming agency. See, a lot of people, when they try to start channeling, they'll do like nonsense words and maybe some phrases will come through, but it's all nonsense. So all of a sudden, if like a full coherent sentence comes through and it sounds like, whoa, this is not the person that's channeling, this is like some other entity. A lot of people will stop right there and they'll say, wow, this is legit. Even if the message is BS, right? They think it's legit just because it's not the person. And so there isn't a sufficient criteria system for filtering out to that level of BS. And you have to go
Mhm.
several levels beyond that, like, testing the spirits, as they say in Christianity. You have to test what comes through. You have to be critical. And once again, truth does not fear scrutiny. So whatever comes through, you have to question it, and it's okay to question it. And if the entity freaks out that you're questioning it, then it's not 100% not legit. That's pretty much it. So I would say that more than 90% of the channeling that's out there is highly, highly suspect and probably not even worth your time to look into. However, there is that remnant 10% where even if part of it might be kind of maybe possibly corrupted, the general body of it does not seem disinformative. And even if you only take it as food for thought, there is a level of novelty and originality in there that you and pretty much all of humanity has not thought of yet. So it's a novel thing. It's like, holy crap, that's a cool idea. Let me look into that. Let me research it. And when you do research it, you find that, oh, that's legit. That's a good path to go down. So, there's a small fragment of channeling out there that I would say is, I wouldn't say it's 100% legit, but it's good enough that it's worth the time to pursue. And which one that is, I think is a matter of opinion, because if I named one of them, then it'd be very easy for someone to say, well, look at that flaw or look at that problem with it or something. And that's true. But the thing is, I'm not talking about the flaws. I'm talking about the parts of it that are good. And are they original? Are they verifiable? Are they true? Are they practical? Did they lead us in a new novel direction? And I would say yes. And so that's why I do like certain channeling, but I don't rely on it. And I never, ever, ever take it as gospel or take it at its word. I take it only as food for thought. So imagine you're interacting with Chat GPT or one of these large language models, right? And it's giving you answers, but it's also hallucinating things and it's getting some trivia and some facts wrong. And it's not anything that you can cite in a footnote to some article or book you're writing. It's just one of those stupid AIs, right? Well, that's what channeling is. It's just like that. You're getting these ideas. Wow, that's cool. That's an interesting way of looking at things, but it's not an authority. You can't really cite it. It doesn't offer really any proof, but it does offer very creative food for thought. And that's what the value is that I find in channeling.
All right, I have a very specific question for you. Okay, from a big fan. Okay, so I'm just going to read it for people on the radio. So Jalea writes, "Okay, Tom, what do you think about Tim Tactics saying that he knows for a fact my lab and university study MRI imaging about that humans are infested with a mind parasite of an ultra-terrestrial?"
Of an ultra-terrestrial, interesting. Well, here's the thing. When we talk about MRI, then clearly if it's ultra-terrestrial, it would have to be a functional pattern rather than a physical organ, right? Or a physical implant. Because if it's ultra-terrestrial and it's non-physical, then it would just have to be like, like a particular brain area being activated or circuits being connected that shouldn't be connected, or some sort of thing being more active than usual. And I mean, that'd be very difficult to fully diagnose, right? Because it's a non-physical thing. It's more just a function. And typically in those kinds of cases, what we're talking about is we're talking about an etheric entity or an etheric implant that is in the head. That isn't physical. It's etheric, but it has physical side effects, which can be detected through MRI. And if he says he knows it for fact, I'd be interested in seeing like what his facts or reasons are, because it seems promising. I mean, I don't have too many other data points that necessarily corroborate it, but I will say that it's promising enough that it's worth looking into.
Who is Tim Tactics? I don't even know who this person is.
See?
Do you have any idea?
Nope. So I have to look it up.
Yeah.
But thanks, Julia.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, going back on the path where we were.
Yeah.
Oh, given everything that's going on in the world right now, what's your theory on what's going on in the background? Is there some sort of competition between these ultra terrestrials, not non-human intelligent species? Like, what's going on in the background right now? Because it seems like crazy town to me.
Well, so the thing is, if you zoom out far enough, okay, if you zoom out way out, you start getting into the realm of ancient history, ancient alien stuff, and also
Mhm.
anomalies within the human genome. Like, for example, the fact that we've got a couple fewer chromosomes than chimpanzees do or apes do, and that's because a couple of them got fused however many thousands of years ago. Things like that and other genetic anomalies that indicate that we are genetically modified organisms, right? So it doesn't mean that our soul, our consciousness has been created by aliens, because I mean that part's been created by the infinite creator. Okay, so that's that. But these vehicles that we reside in, these bodies, this human genome, there's just so many weird things about it. And people like Lloyd Pye and some others have really gotten into the genetic anomalies. So in context of that, the question is, are these NHIs manipulating humanity on a grand scale over eons? We're talking like at least 300,000 years. And I would say yes. And then the next question is, are they still manipulating us today? And I would say yes. Now, it may not be the same particular alien group, whether it's merely extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial. However, there seems to be a non-human component that is manipulating civilization according to a kind of organized track with a certain timetable. And this timetable seems to be linked to cataclysm cycles having to do with the precession of the Earth's axis, every 25,920 years, and also solar, like sun cycles, things like a solar explosion or micronovas or grand cooling periods, ice ages, that whole thing, because those are the things that these beings probably can't control, or maybe it's not good for them to control. So that's like the clock that they're operating on. I mean, you can't control the clock, right? So you
Mhm.
organize your day according to the clock. You organize your week according to the calendar. So these things organize it according to these natural cycles. And the problem is we have various natural cycles that are converging. We have the geomagnetic field taking a nosedive, probably reaching a 0 point. I mean, not zero, like 5% point, probably around like 2040, 2050 at the latest. And that stuff, along with solar EMPs that could fry our electric grid and satellites, all those things are civilization enders or changers, at least. They're just disruptors. Okay. So what that means is a lot of things that are going on today in geopolitics, like Russia, Ukraine, NATO against Russia, the whole the rise of BRICS and the multipolar order, that whole thing seems to me to be part of ultimately an alien agenda that is keeping an eye on these cataclysms that are coming up, in order to kind of precondition our civilization culturally, technologically, geopolitically, in order to maintain control over us through a time of chaos. Okay. And what that means is, unfortunately, it'll mean that we will be moving more into a kind of authoritarian system, for good or for bad, because authoritarianism is needed in order to create the kind of lockdown or cohesion that can keep society together during a time of mass calorie restriction or disruptions to the electric grid or communications grid or whatever. So because in a 100% free society where everyone's doing their own thing, there's not enough coordination or cohesiveness in order for people to band together and help each other survive. So there has to be a coordinating mechanism, especially for humans. I'm sure to aliens, trying to control us is like trying to herd cats, because we're you know how we are. We're kind of crazy and wild compared to them. I mean, they're all kind of like stiff and robotic, but we're quite wild about it. And so I do think that there's a lot of control mechanisms that are being put into place now in order to lock things down for these cataclysm times that are coming up. And the only real battle is over what kind of authoritarianism and towards what ends. Because from what I've been able to tell, there's at least one agenda which is oriented towards a kind of Borg-like hive mind, transhumanist, genetically assimilate us into becoming more like the Greys, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I hope somebody shoots me before that happens. But that's just me.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
Right.
totally. And actually, I mean, communism, and I guess more so communism than anything, is like a warm up to that sort of thing, because it's already collectivist, unindividualistic, so it's already moving in that direction. Okay, so that's one thing, and then the other one, which on my Twitter, on my Twitter page, and actually my social media, maybe like it was like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I talked about a plan A, which is the whole like gray alien agenda, transhumanism, lock us down, make us eat bugs, that sort of thing, versus a kind of plan B, which also seems to be in effect, which is more of a technological acceleration, Star Trek future, surveillance, AI, eugenics, genetic enhancements. And the thing about that is, okay, from a purely logical and practical point of view, most of those things are probably good for humanity long term. However, um, it carries the risk of being almost fascist in its implementation.
Yeah. A genetic arms race is kind of the natural implication of that.
Yeah, right. And
Right.
actually, and the Germans were kind of in the early 1900s, so they were kind of a forerunners of this line of thinking. Right. So now Nazism was just a very extreme expression of that. But generally, German thinking during the 1930s and 1940s, that is sort of this other template that I'm seeing coming up in the future. So you could say it's almost like another version of communism versus Nazism, but it's like a different kind of Nazism. It's like German technocratic, almost like Nordic alien civilization kind of a thing that seems to be being founded or seeded or constructed right now in competition with this other plan, which is more the gray alien hive mind totalitarianism communism thing. So
it's clear in U.S. society where that is. Like,
yeah,
again, I don't want to go into politics, but it's pretty black and white where that sort of thing is coming from. Where's the other one coming from?
now when we say which the one that's clear, are you talking about the transhumanist hive mind communism thing?
Communism, right.
Yeah, right.
That's clear where that's coming from.
Okay, right. So I would say keep a close eye on the whole like MAGA Trump thing, especially with Elon Musk. Because if you look at Musk, okay, and for many years he played that game of being like, oh, I'm a centrist, I'm not really on Trump's side, but in the end he came out of the closet. I mean, I always knew, because back like even like 5-10 years ago, he was on the Chans, he was on 4chan and all those groups, so he was speaking the lingo. So he was already in that even years ago, and only now is he coming out in full support of MAGA and Trump, because now is the time. It's a coordinated thing that's happening now. It's not.
Well, I think one of the other ideology basically destroyed one of his children. So
yeah,
that'll change your mind pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing. The Musk thing, it carries a lot of shades of, well, because SpaceX is one of the lead contractors for the DoD. They do a lot of technical stuff for them, like satellites and other things that aren't public. And there's a lot of cultural cross transference between them, where the things that Elon Musk is into and talks about, like for example, underground boring machines, colonizing Mars, AI, robots, those are things that probably within the Black Ops world they've already had for who knows how many decades, probably going back to the 1950s, 60s at least, right? So that Black Ops culture stuff is coming out into the mainstream, in my opinion. And
like the Soviets had submarines like in the 1970s, right, where they were nuclear. I mean, there was a concept, I don't know if they actually had it, but of a nuclear powered submarine where they just superheated as they have like a drill going underground anyway, that's neither here nor there. But okay, so these special ops technologies come out. We were just talking about the jelly UFO. I think that was just like a man pack, right? Like something that someone in special forces just like a flying platform that they had. Because if you zoom in, that's exactly what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so these special forces technologies kind of coming out into the mainstream. What else?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because here's the thing. If humanity is going to go through a cataclysmic time period, we can't do it under our current political structure or our current technologies. There has to be, I mean, you could if you locked it down in a totalitarian concentration camp, feed everyone bugs kind of way, which is not good, right? But you can do it also in the other way where you accelerate through it, like technologically accelerate through it. Now, accelerationism in itself, it's not bad. It's just if you go too far and you start intruding upon the mind, like, brain implants and genetically modifying, crossing us with animals or something, don't even go there, right?
Yeah, we don't even know our own natural capabilities on kind of in the psychic ESP spectrum, right? So you start putting stuff in your brain, technology in your brain, you could retard that, right? For all we know.
Yeah. And a lot of these accelerationists, they are materialists, so they know nothing about consciousness or the soul, out of body stuff, afterlife, reincarnation. They know nothing about that. And so they are kind of blindly jettisoning themselves into an accelerated future, which is probably going to be right off a cliff towards a dark abyss, spiritually speaking. So, but the thing is, the things that they are doing are oftentimes necessary to get us through the coming crises. So I'm with them up to a certain point. I'm with them in the sense of, okay, we do need more energy. We need better propulsion technology, cleaner environment, better information stuff. AI can help too. But beyond a certain point, they're going to go into the darkness, but we have to get off that train and continue on in a more spiritual direction. So I'm siding with that particular agenda, but not in a 100% committed way forever. Because I know at a certain point they're going to keep on crashing, and we're going to have to go in an upwards direction. So I'm expecting that part to fork at some point in the future.
And even that path, there are off ramps to the other path.
Yeah.
Right. Like once they start putting chips into your brain, right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beachhead for a implanted basically for a hive mind kind of, or global panopticon, right, where your thoughts are monitored and all sorts of other crazy things like that. So do you think the elites know that all this stuff is coming and they're working with NHI, or do you think it's more subtle than that? They're just kind of getting nudged and pointed in that direction.
I think it depends on the level of elite that we're talking about. So if we're talking about the lower levels, they are all compartmentalized, and they don't.
Well, let's say presidents. Let's say presidents.
Oh, presidents.
Presidents. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not. Probably. Well, so it's hard to say with Trump because he himself, his family history with his uncle John G. Trump, and their ties to Tesla and various hermetic groups in America and German industrialists and all that. There's some funny stuff going on there. So maybe he knows. Okay, maybe he knows. But I mean, look at George W. Bush, for example. I really doubt that he was fully aware as much as Dick Cheney was, for example. I mean, Dick Cheney has way more ties to the military-industrial complex, so he'd be more read in than George W. Bush is, right? So there are certain elites that they only know as much as they need to know. And a lot of them don't need to know much in order to do their functions, especially if they're out in the public eye being mascots or spokespersons for, some sort of secret agenda. But the ones at the very top, of course, they would be, as I always say, the top of the human pyramid is the bottom of the NHI pyramid. So where they leave off is where the NHI stuff starts off. So we could have the best elite of the world interfacing, let's say, with gray aliens who themselves are the bottom of the rung as far as the alien hierarchy goes, the totem pole. So, it's like it's alien turtles all the way up in a way.
And who is at the top of our hierarchy? These just like the Rothschilds and things like that, or are they beyond that?
I think it's beyond that because we're talking then about special bloodlines that have special abilities in terms of hyper intelligence, hyper psychic abilities. It probably even ties into those ancient elongated skull people. Those mysterious Paracas skulls. They've also been found in Malta and around the world. And then later cultures bound their babies' heads to mimic that because they're trying to keep up a tradition. It used to be culturally distilled into them that having an elongated head means that you're an elite. Because a long time ago, especially in Egypt, there were kings and pharaohs who had those elongated heads.
Yeah, it's like what Amenaten, is that the?
Yeah, Akhenaten and some others.
Akhenaten.
Yeah, Akhenaten and his descendants. I mean, even King Tut, who wasn't fully pure bloodline, also had that because he was he the son of Akhenaten? No, I forget now. But he was kind of like a couple generations removed, and he had it too. So I do think that there are bloodlines with special abilities, and ability is sort of what determines your placement within the hierarchy. Like, you're not going to just get it out of nepotism or favoritism. You're going to get it because you are smarter, you're more psychic, you live longer, you've got a longer range of view, and that's what puts you up there. And that's why, even within the abduction field, that's why mantids tend to be above the reptilians, above even the Nordics, above even the Greys, because they are the most intelligent and they have the most fiercest, it's crazy, the fiercest level of psychic ability compared to all the others. Okay, they're the most powerful, and so therefore they're at the top. And I would say that therefore, same thing happens within the human sphere. So there are superhumans out there who have crazy abilities, crazy psychic abilities compared to us, and naturally over time they would rise to the top. but they still wouldn't be as powerful as actual aliens are. So therefore, they would be right beneath them in terms of level.
Where are these people? Like, where do they hide out?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in ancient times, they were around. They were the kings, they were the queens, they had a global well, they had the ability to navigate around the globe in ships. And also, interestingly enough, the elongated skull, that back of the part of the head that, is elongated, that part has to do with mathematical ability, geometric ability, and like finger dexterity. And so these ancient megalithic cultures, they were so much into astronomical alignments, geoglyphs on the ground, and especially amongst the ancient Mesoamericans, the writing system wasn't on tablets; it was on strings. It's called the quipu system, I think. They're like little knots on strings,
Mhm.
and you literally use your fingers to feel the information. So it's very tactile. All those things involve the back of the skull, and a lot of those pictures of those ancient Mayans and before they had those elongated skulls as well. So I think there's something going on there. I'm not saying it's the only bloodline that is in charge of things, but nowadays, I would say, I mean, they can't be out there, obviously, because that's very suspicious, right? So, I mean, they're probably sequestered either underground or in like private estates where the public never even hears of them, and they probably have empires. I mean, because when we talk about the Rothschilds, they are like kiddies, like kids compared to these ancient ones, you could say.
And how old do you think these people live to be?
Um, See, the thing is that gets into the question of not only alien technology, but also alchemy. Because with alchemy, which I do think is legit, because I've researched it quite a bit, with alchemy, you can live up to, I would say, 900 years, 1,000 years. So at minimum, 300. Okay, so we were talking about people that could have been there during the founding of America in the 1700s and are still here today to kind of see us through this next phase. This whole entire couple past centuries could have been one of their pet projects for all we know. That's how long they live. Not to mention 1,000 years, because in lore, with the founding of America, there was this mysterious stranger, which some people thought was the Comte Saint Germain. They thought that was a mysterious stranger that met with the founding fathers and gave them direction on how America should go and what the philosophy should be and the symbolism. And here we are with the one-eyed pyramid, and the phoenix was the original bird of America. There's all this like occult Illuminati type symbolism involved in the founding of America, right? Not to mention the Masonic street geometry in Washington D.C. and the obelisk, the
Mhm.
Washington Monument. All those things, they are interesting reflections of some sort of secret society knowledge, some sort of occult knowledge that deals in geometry and numbers and architecture. And that's why I do think that all traces back ultimately to those people that were around, 5, 10,000 years ago, and probably were amongst the various engineers of civilization itself. And I do think that their agenda is probably being fulfilled nowadays, even though on the surface, just looking at the news, all we see is, we see Trump, we see Putin, we see Xi Jinping, we see all this stuff, but that's all surface level chess pieces. What's underneath the surface? That is a question. And I do think that what is underneath the surface has a continuity or a tradition that goes back at least 10,000 years.
And are these people's kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, are their motivations aligned with ours, or are they kind of in direct contradiction?
I think there are different factions, because historically, even in myth, there have always been dueling forces. Good gods versus the dark gods, and sometimes it gets switched between, but it's not monolithic at all. So I would imagine that there is still a competition nowadays between various factions, not only NHI, but also these secret societies, these bloodlines, and so on. And therefore, the future isn't really set in stone, I don't think. And I think that's why there is this Agenda A, the whole like transhumanist communist thing, versus Agenda B, which is more of an accelerationist kind of Star Trek, Nordic alien kind of thing going on. Those two things, I think, are the main primary drivers of events nowadays, and probably even historically, because some of the things that are happening nowadays, for example, Israel versus Iran and the Palestinians, those dynamics go back at least 3,000 years
Mhm.
due to events that happened back then. So who's to say that things weren't engineered or seeded 3,000 years ago in order to lead to a certain culmination that we have nowadays? Because only nowadays do we have nuclear weapons, massive armies, right? So now we're kind of ripe for whatever that game was for, that was started that long ago.
Armageddon, huh?
Yeah, Armageddon, but the end is always the beginning, right? So it's more of a transition. It's more of a catalyst. But best of all, it's not a catalyst towards a singular future in the sense that, the world's going to get hit by comets and we're all going to be living in concentration camps for centuries. I mean, that's not guaranteed at all, because I do think that there is a positive agenda. But here's the problem. The problem is that the positive agenda, it is also intelligent and aware of the practical reality of the human situation. So, for example, okay, if you're some positive force that you want to uplift humanity, okay, well, what do you do about human technologies, weapons of war? What do you do about all the corruption in government, for example? You can't have a positive future without getting rid of that corruption, but you can't get rid of it without the use of force to some degree, legal force, physical force, whatever. So that already entails some sort of revolution, purge, that we would consider violent. So then a new ager would be like, oh my God, these positive forces are advocating for a violent purge of something like certain governments. That's contradictory, but it's not contradictory if we think about positive forces in the sense of them being highly pragmatic. So they have a positive vision, but they also know that you have to have a very practical way of getting there. And so that's why, when I talk about a sort of positive agenda, like, accelerationism or something, there's negative aspects to it, but those negative aspects, for the most part, they're due to the practical realities that we have to deal with in order to get to that positive future. And that's why it is not sunshine and rainbows and happy unicorns, because there's just too much hard decisions to be made that will be very rough from our politically correct sensibilities at this time.
Do you think that a lot of this great unmasking that we're seeing with our elites is part of this kind of, let's call it shedding the dead weight? Do you think that's part of it? Do you think that's coordinated?
Partly. I think it's half coordinated. And the reason why I say that is because they are themselves getting quite desperate, for no other reason than the fact that information is spreading too much and they can't censor it like they used to, before the age of the internet. So they are losing control. And in order to regain control, they have to overplay their hand. They're overplaying their hand, which reveals them even more, which wakes more people up. So they're kind of caught in this death spiral, this death bloom of people awakening. But the thing is, any sort of positive force can kind of control that the same way a matador controls the raging bull. So the raging bull is out of control. He wants to just kill the freaking matador, but the matador knows how to, move the cape and do all the right moves in order to guide that sort of rage. So I do think that death spiral or that death bloom is being guided or controlled or nudged, kind of kicked, tripped up along the way, and it's sort of like a jujitsu or judo kind of way, by positive forces that have the precognition and the foresight and the ability to make those subtle nudges to guide that thing. And so ultimately, I think they are quite screwed, to be honest. But the one thing that the positive forces cannot help us with is the inevitabilities that they themselves can't stop. For example, global cataclysms. The fact that our society is based on lies, on debt, on corruption. And if you try to take that away, you're going to have a collapse of a lot of things. That cannot be prevented, right? So it's very likely that we will go through a very rough reshaping collapse process to get to any kind of positive future.
Yeah, it's just hopefully we can do that before we need to rapidly reorganize in the wake of any cataclysm.
Yeah, I will say this though. Yeah, I will say this, that the most promising thing right now is the fact that the culture war, in my opinion, the culture war has been won by positive forces. Only in the sense that the trajectory of awakening is upwards. So yes, we still have a corrupt media. We still have all these SJW crazies out there, totally programmed in kids. But the thing is, like, even the youngest generation of kids now, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha after that, they're already on the upward trajectory of coming out of that mess that the millennials were in.
Yeah, they see it. They see it.
Yeah, they do. And so therefore the future is bright in that sense. Because ultimately, all these elites, they can do whatever they do, but ultimately they need the power and the consent of the people to do what they do. And so if the cultural base of the people is moving towards awakening, then that's a good sign, because that points to the positive future having a way higher probability now than it would have been, like, even 20 years ago when people were just totally asleep and not even awake to these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, if these clowns got more power and had more control over people's lives, it wouldn't be worth living. I mean, it would like if they could control what you buy, you get nothing but the bugs, this and that. Just not worth it. Not worth it.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm super optimistic, to be honest. Despite all the difficult choices and catalysts that will still be coming up, I'm optimistic that we have what it takes to get through to that positive future.
Now, all this information that you have, where have you kind of gathered it over time? Like, what have been your sources of knowledge and study? Is it knowledge? Is it belief? Is it based on certain texts, mosaic theory, direct revelation by whatever, God, non-human intelligences? Where does all your information come from?
All right, so it's a mix. I would say 50% of it is just personal experience and observation, and also people that I've interacted with over the years. So as I mentioned on other shows, I've interacted with like 30,000 people, probably at least online. So I've interacted with a ton of people, including many researchers, experiencers, and they all share with me their experiences, their conclusions, their data, and so therefore I have a pretty broad survey, I guess you could say, of generally what's out there, right? And not only that, but I went to college for physics and electrical engineering, and I know you've had some of that too in your background, which is good because it trains you to be analytical, to be critical, to scrutinize, and to not just rely on feelings. Now, feelings are important, intuition's important, but whatever you get through, whatever you feel, you have to put it into words, you have to analyze it, and you have to put it through that scrutiny of logic, because if it is the truth, it's going to withstand it with ease. Logic is even going to confirm it for you. So therefore, if you have a ton of data, a lot of questions, and you just run it through that analysis process, you start coming up with a working hypothesis that fits more and more things. And so if I come across something that does not fit, then instead of just ignoring it or doing like academics do, just trying to rationalize it away, so I never have to question my own self, instead of that, I honestly sit down and I try to figure out, like, okay, is this legit? Is there something I need to think about? And then I try to think, okay, well, how do I modify my theory in order to make more sense of this new data point? And so, if you do that over the years, then your viewpoint just increases more and more. Now, it's a work in progress, so therefore, I'm not saying that I know the final answer or that everything I'm saying is 100% true, but it is as true as I can make it be for now, And if something comes along that shows I'm wrong, I'll gladly change it in order to improve it and give a better viewpoint.
That's 100% the key right there is, not calcifying or having a calcified view of reality and being willing to take in new information and change your views, provided, on the weight of that information. I mean, you shouldn't change it willy-nilly based on every change and permutation and jump. But, if there is something that is significant, you should be willing to change that view. Absolutely. All right, I think we're running up toward, I think we have about 2 minutes left. So any final words for the audience?
Well, I just want to say thanks for listening. And I think it's really important to understand that there are both positive and negative forces. And even if what we consider positive or negative is kind of anthropomorphic and relative, the fact is we are the ones that are experiencing it. So it's relative to us, and therefore it matters to us. So we can still make that distinction. And I think one of the most critical tools involving that is not only your intuition, your feeling, but also your logic. You have to have both. You have to have both your head and your heart. And that's kind of a message that I've given on many shows because it is the most important, which is that you do have to combine both of your spiritual assets. We have reason for a reason, and we have feelings for a reason too. So those two things, if you kind of alternate between them and have one be a check on the other, things work out.
Yeah, as the Romans called them, intellectus and intuitus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So both were important in coming to reasoned decisions. So any projects that you're working on that you want to let people know about before we end the show?
Let's see. So I've been working very hard on physics. I'm brushing up, learning some of the mathematical innards of general relativity because there's some extremely important anti-gravity applications. And I've been so busy working on my new invention, this little cool little thing right here. So this is the ESP-783. It is a Schumann resonance magnetic field generator, and it is
Mhm.
superior to anything that's out there. Now, these things are in hot demand, and they're sold out at the moment, but I should have another batch in stock probably in, I'd say mid-November, probably. So,
And what exactly does it do? It just generates the Schumann resonance for you, or
well,
what?
yeah, so it generates all 5 Schumann resonances at the same time. Because anything else out there, it only does one frequency, the main one, like 7.83 hertz. But this does the entire harmonic series, which is how it is in natural nature. And it does it with very smooth sine waves. Because a lot of these other devices out there, they do like really sharp pulses or it's very weak or something. No, this is strong enough that if you hold a magnet, a neodymium magnet up to it, you can feel the vibrations. So there's no imagination about it. There's no make believe about it. It's not like some sort of tachyon energy pendant from Sirius or something. This is like the natural electrical engineering kind of a thing. So it's an experimental unit for experimenting with low frequency magnetic fields. And it has 12 modes. So it can also do brain waves like gamma, theta, delta, and some combinations of them. So I've been using it, like I use it right now for my interview because it seems to help me think better because I've got it on the beta frequency mode right now, and so I'm able to be a little more alert for this thing. So yeah, I mean, people want to try it out, they can pick one up eventually when they're back in stock.
And it's on your website at montauk.net.
Not quite yet. It's in my social media feeds, and I'll announce it again when it's released. So
Okay.
yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. It was an absolute pleasure, and you'll be on again. I
Yeah.
guarantee at some point. So
Yeah,
it's
we'll do
always
that.
good talking to you, and the fans love you. So anyway, I felt bad that I had to like run interference for the first hour because it's just like he's coming, but he's going to be in the
Yeah.
second half.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks so much.
but yep. Thank you very much, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Okay.